Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Creators Corner. My name is James Dale, and my next guest is Dr. Thomas Parker. How you doing this morning, Dr. Parker?
Yeah, what's up, man? I'm not too bad, man. Just trying to do the work, you know what I mean?
All right. No, trying means you anticipate failing. You just doing, you out there doing, man.
Show
Heaven
enough, show enough.
bless us, and God has touched all of us with a gift. Some of us ignore those signs, and some of us, like yourself, you take the baton and you run with it, and whenever you're ready to pass on the baton, the next person gotta look forward and keep the movement going, keep the journey going.
Life is a race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So Dr. Parker is a public intellectual who earned his PhD in philosophy from Columbia University. He holds two master's degrees and a bachelor's degree. He is a tenured professor who has taught at various universities for over a decade and is a published scientist. He has conducted scientific research at universities like Einstein Medical School, Lehman University of Akron, Miami University, and Columbia. He also runs a pharmaceutical company and a motivational company called Me O'Clock. Currently, he gives motivational talks to individuals about how to think like a scientist while giving them experience conducting research. You are a very accomplished person, and how do you find the time to do all of this great work?
You make the time. You know
Mm.
what I mean? You make the time and you try to do what you love,
Okay.
and yeah, you try not to allow society to distract you, you know? Yeah.
That's great. So how has the process slash journey slash experience been earning your degrees and teaching and touching people's lives so far?
It's been a blessing. You try to focus on the positive, you try to focus on, the righteous path, and you try to remember why you started in the first place.
Okay.
Um, and I'm grateful that, some individuals look to me for guidance and support, and that's all you can really do. Um, yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
at times, is it like daunting? Is it scary to have so many people reach
I'm sorry.
you for motivation?
I would say that, you know, it's harder than one would think because, when you get to a certain level, there's a ceiling
Hmm.
and you need someone to bring you up.
Okay.
And the hard thing is that the people who are strong enough to bring you up are so busy fighting their own battles
Right.
that they don't have time to guide you. And then you hear the stories from them and you hear what they're actually going through in that space as a person of color, and you get nervous that it could happen to you also.
Right.
And so you try to build with people who are like-minded around you, but then you understand what they're going through as well. And some of them may not be as ambitious as you, so they might be content. And so for me, as an individual who loves to grow, it's just trying to grow with people who are strong in their space, and we all come up together.
Right.
But
Right.
I think individuals haven't learned how to grow or learn what they're best at. I think some people are just focused more so on what they're good at
Hmm.
as opposed to what they could be, wanting to explore, wanting to learn more of. And for me, I just love learning so much that's hard for me to just stop. Um, so yeah, yeah.
In my experience talking to people and being around people, because I'm in the public, I drive a city bus and I do this show, Creators Corner, and I'm on the radio, and people are afraid to fail. But at times, like you said, you deal with like-minded people. Steel sharpens steel. And you may not think people are watching you and getting inspiration from you, but people are. You just have to walk your walk and talk your talk. And people who are ready to make their own journey and sacrifices to better themselves, they will, pick up the baton and say, you know what, I got to dust myself off and do what the Almighty has granted me to do and called me to do. What is the or was the driving factor for you to earn your degrees? And may I ask, I see that you have a PhD in philosophy, but what is your master's degrees and bachelor's degree?
So yeah, so the PhD is a Doctor of Philosophy
Mhm,
degree, and I actually have a PhD in from the Mathematics, Technology, and Science program.
mhm,
And you know, I guess what led me to do it, and trust me, I was trying my best to not go into this space, but I will. But something kept telling me that I would have to get my PhD because there's something I would have to say and people wouldn't believe me.
mhm,
And kept telling me, I'm like, man, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't have no support. And someone's like, you're gonna have something to say. You're gonna have something to say. They're not gonna believe you though. And I'm just like, fine, I'll keep going. And then so I just kept going. And then it was actually this summer to where I really started to tap into, I think, why I got the PhD. And it was just like the experiences I've had this summer is what I couldn't get from any book.
mhm,
Experiences I couldn't get from any, just looking from, my balcony and just being able to kind of move people with my mind, like just making statements like, hey, universe, talk to me. If you're really out there, if you're really real, and then just observing, a song playing and it's saying exactly what I'm seeing the first time I'm hearing the song, and it's saying exactly what I'm looking at, and happening again the following day. I'm looking outside my terrace and I see somebody and I say, hey, universe, I'll believe you're real if this person stops in the middle of the street and starts walking back this way. Right. And then they actually do it within like 15 seconds.
mhm,
Right. Like experiences like that countless times. And then different times where, I'll be interacting with somebody, they'll say a word and I'll see it, right? On a car, on a t-shirt, somewhere, right? And it just happens so many times. And I'm like, wow, there's more to it. And it happened so many times to where I actually was able to, feel so in touch with the universe. I said, hey, if you're really out there, show yourself to me.
mhm.
And something appeared in a picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just so wild. And it's just like, I looked at the other pictures and nothing else was there until I asked for that to happen. You know what I mean? Until I requested it. And it's just, I think other individuals have this ability. But it saddens me that people haven't learned to tap into it, and just interacting with my students, and seeing kind of, me put them on to this type of thought process. And then I remember, a student, I was talking to her and I mentioned the word deja vu. And within 10 seconds of me saying it, she said, oh my God, I just experienced deja vu. So me, I'm like, all right, now let me question this. How do I know? Did you see me in all black before? Da, da, da? No, never. You never, this is only my fifth time. You never wore all black. No. Okay. You know what I mean? So it's like, the more times it happens, you start to actually believe, because then it's happening amongst other people. So you're like, all right, I'm not bugged out because you just seen this, right? Y'all seen this, right? And then just other times I'll say a word and my students will like a student say it and a student write it. And I was telling them about that process, how you can think of something, verbalize it, and somebody can write it or see it. And then after I said it to them, this started happening to them. Right. So just seeing that there's supernatural things that can occur and do occur, but it's not discussed. And it started to make me wonder why it's not discussed, right? So that's what I've been into all summer, is trying to understand these spaces that aren't discussed and looking at why, right? And really wondering why it's not taught in schools. Because being in the public school system, being in private high schools, being in public high schools, teaching in both colleges, it's not discussed. And it's just like something else has to happen, because we have food prices that are exorbitant. We have, schools that aren't teaching, you know, you know, just nothing is as it feels it should be. And it's just like trying to step away from all of it and understand what is being missed and what they're feeding us.
Right. So I think
Yeah.
the discussions need to happen. Discussion groups need to happen. Forums need to happen so people can express themselves in situations and topics, just like you explained, for people to be in the same room with like-minded people, so they can know and be comfortable that what they're feeling and what they're experiencing they're not unique. You know what I mean? They're not crazy. It's not abnormal to feel the way they feel. It's not abnormal to have sights and have powers of sights and wonders, because those are gifts from the Almighty. You know what I mean? To have visions, to have sights, to be able to heal people, to be able to have links with somebody else who you never met before. Be empathetic of somebody else's plight, who you don't know they are going through something, but it's something that is innate in you, that there's something off about this person, and you're drawn to them and try to help them heal from what they are going through. And it is forums like what you go through in your school, that is important for people to go to and have that release, because there's a lot of individuals out there, and some coping mechanisms are writing, some coping mechanisms are painting, some coping mechanisms are just listening to music, but it all dumbs down what they are really going through. And sometimes they don't get an opportunity to express their feeling to other individuals like themselves. And that prevents them from growing and blossoming and honing that gift that they may have. I noticed that you have the Me O'Clock shirt on, and I, read in your bio that you started a motivational company called Me O'Clock. Could you elaborate on that more?
Yeah. I started it because, from lack of support,
Okay.
right? And I just wanted to kind of remind people to not wait for help. You know what I mean? I think we have to realize that we have two hands for a reason. And so the support we're looking for from others, that's why we have two hands. At some point you have to realize that nobody's going to be there for you the way you need to be there for yourself. And sometimes you have to just understand that, and not wait for people. Don't wait for nobody to go on vacation with you. Don't wait for nobody to love you. Don't wait for nobody to support your business. They'll come on board when they're supposed to. And I think sometimes we get lonely and down on ourselves, and we think somebody should rescue us, and it's just like, no, you have to save yourself first. Similar to how when you get in the airplane, they say put your mask on first, because how can you
Yeah.
put the mask on somebody else if you about to pass out? So
Yeah.
just using that as a reminder to myself, and then just wearing it, just seeing like people loved it, right? Like, I'm in Central Park, of nowhere, no matter where I'm at, people like, hey, I like that name, I like that, you know, and just yeah. So I just wanted to use it to like encourage everybody else to be their best selves, and no longer be average as well. Um,
Right. That's cool. I see a lot of posts that you have with the Me O'Clock logo on it. Is it just clothing line? Is it watches? Is it apparel? what is the main focus, or is just the name to get that message out there for people
Yeah.
so they can know that to give time to themselves?
Right, right. No, good question. So we make watches, we make sweatpants, hats, shirts. It's just different, concepts and phrases to kind of get people to, move,
Okay.
right? It's all about movement, or to surround yourself with people that can help you move, that will help you move.
Right.
And it's not, just not only trying to depend on yourself, but like, hey, who do I have to call to help me get to where I need to be? And not being ashamed to ask questions and saying, hey, I need some guidance, I need some support. And yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Using a watch is a great motivator because a clock is always moving, as long as you have either kinetic energy or a battery source to help it moving, and it goes around in circles, and the time ticks whether you move the arms or not. So that's a great tool to use for the motivation phrase meal clock. Being a professor and a scientist and a designer, where do you find the time, pun intended, to do all of this good stuff? You know what I mean? Like, what is your motivation?
You know, you know, for me, I just want to, I would say, I just want to, I just seen a friend walking by. I don't want to, I have energy right now for whatever reason. Honestly, I don't know why. And sometimes you want to do it before you get too tired. Because once you get too far into baby mode, family mode, you might not be able to come back.
Right.
And I believe that if you stop being creative, the beings are going to stop giving you the creative thoughts that you have.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to feed you anymore. How would you
Mm-hmm.
feed somebody who ain't do nothing with what you get?
That's
For
true.
what? So
Right.
I believe that I have to execute these ideas before I stop getting fed. And what happens? Like a shark, if it stop moving, what? It dies.
Yeah.
Right? So if I don't move on these ideas, they're gonna go give it to somebody else. Because we all get the same ideas. It's about who executed.
Yeah.
I think it was Einstein and another scientist in another country came up with the same idea at the same time. Right? And this was before, like, phone calls, internet, everything, and the same idea, and they kind of published the research around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because everybody gets the same idea from another dimension.
Yeah, somebody.
It's all about who executed, because the idea needs to come out by a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
It does, and it don't matter who do it. But if you are in tune, you'll get it first, and if you have the right connections, you'll be able to execute it. But not everybody has the right connections, has the time. People get sick. That's why dynasties fall. Somebody gets sick. So you thinking, nah, I'm not going to do that because this one doing it. But meanwhile, this one's sick. Meanwhile, this one family structure is breaking down. Meanwhile, they hurt their leg, they injured, right? So now you're not making a move, not realizing that this one's about to downfall, and you could be next. And people are not even thinking like that,
Yeah.
right? And it's not that you're pushing somebody's downfall, right? But it's just like people finding excuses why they can't be great. And my whole thing is, I want people to start to learn to begin to not wait for somebody to pull out their genius, right? Extract the genius from them. I want them to have it on display, right? And that's my whole goal, right? How can you consistently have your genius on display? Maybe you tired that maybe you don't physically look your best, but how can you say the right things to attract the right people? How can you be the flower and allow the people to come to you? Or when is it time to be the lion or the tiger and go get it, right? And just knowing when each time or opportunity to be, which one, that's what people have to pick up on.
That's
and
true.
That takes practice.
Yeah, it
and
does.
conversation, connection, community.
And that reminds me of Gandhi. Gandhi was a lawyer, and he was in South Africa, and he saw the mistreatment of his countrymen in South Africa, and he totally switched his whole focus and being an activist for his people. And he started a whole movement of trying to free not only the minds, but the culture of a whole genre of people, a whole essence of people. And by just being, literally, he was able to save his culture, because if it wasn't for his movement and his ideals, a lot of people wouldn't know about the history of India. Probably would be in museums, and they would say this is ancient culture. This is how these people used to live and used to move, and not how they move currently. You know what I mean? And that is something that is profound, because we as individuals don't know what kind of impact we have and will have in future days on what we do today. You know what I mean? And we all should move in the positive light, and we should all not ignore the signs that are out there that can help us move and shine. It kind of reminds me of The Last Dragon, when he got the glow. You know what I mean? He didn't know that he was going to get the glow, but he got the motivation from his sensei that is going to happen. And at the time that he needed it, when he didn't even want to be confrontational, he was able to tap into that essence and achieve the glow, get the glow. And that is important for us. And this is the reason why I started Creators Corner, to be motivated within myself and my skills and my creativity. And I know that there's a lot of other people out there that are living the mundane life, working a 9 to 5 and not really being who they really are. You know what I mean? Like when they clock out, they go home and they play the drums, or they draw, or they do something. They write music or something like that, and they never tell anyone. I have 5 published books, and when I tell people that I independently published author, they say, "Oh, I wrote a book in college, and I just didn't know how to publish it and what avenue to go." Or they tried to bring it out to a publishing house, and they were rejected. So they got one rejection, and they just say, "Oh, that's not for me." You know what I mean? But you never know what words or sentence or paragraph that you could write down or tell somebody that can spark the idea for that person to make a change in their lives and make a change in other people's lives that surround them. So that is the importance of that phrase, each one teach one. You know what I mean? We all are in this together. We all are human beings, whether we Black or white or Christian or Muslim or rich or poor or American or Asian. We all are human beings, and we are in this together. We are in this plane together, and we have to move forward. And once we set aside our differences, we can move in accordance and make sure that there's no specific end time in the near future, that we're going to keep on transcending and transcending and transcending, just like how light is. Light never stops. It just keeps going and flowing and moving forward. So the work that you're doing, I commend you. And my father, before he passed away, always said that he wants the flowers before he dies. He wanted to smell them now while he's still alive, because when he's dead, he can't smell those flowers. He wanted to eat off the silverware and drink from the china, before he passes away, because when he's gone, he can't enjoy it. He want to enjoy all the fruits of his labor now. And I want to give you your flowers, because you are touching a lot of people, and being an educator is a noble profession. because a lot of people who are educators, I got cousins who are principals and teachers back home in Jamaica, and they don't get a lot of accolades. You know, they're going through a series right now where they're not getting compensated for their work as educators down there, but they still go to work because they know that they have a job to do. They know that they are important in society, but you know, the powers that be don't necessarily take that seriously and want to compensate them. So I want to commend you. I want to applaud you for doing what you're doing and in the work that you are doing in our society.
Nah, brother, you know that really means a lot. And I'm proud of you as well for starting this space and being honest and saying, hey man, I needed some motivation myself. You know what I mean? So if I could give somebody a platform to communicate their thoughts and then get motivated in the process, man, let me just connect with some like minds and see what comes of it. So I definitely get that and I feel that. And it's good that you have this insight into the educators, you know, thoughts, you know, from different perspectives, even different cultures. I know you said, you know, you have family in Jamaica and they're sharing with you, hey, you know, the salary isn't right and the thinking isn't right, and I share that sentiment. So I think as an educator, the emotional toll it takes isn't the best, right? Because not only do you try to teach the student the subject, but you start seeing a lot of things socially that the student could be missing. And it's hard when you only have so much time. It's hard for a teacher to be a therapist and an educator at the same time because you only have so much time in a day. And so a lot of times you're forced to give them this amount of information. But when they can only hold this much because they have this much triggers going on with them that they haven't addressed. I'll give you an example. You said, hey, you know, before my father passed, right? You know, you saying that triggered me because, you know, and you couldn't see it in my face, right? But I never had those relationships with my father to experience that. And there's individuals who don't even have the word dad in their vocabulary, right? And so what gets missed from someone who never had this word in their vocabulary in their whole life, right? What gets missed from individuals who never had the word money in their vocabulary? They didn't have it, so it's not even a part. So we have to think of the parts that's missing, and it's supposed to be an educator's job to teach, but when people have parts that's missing, and they're assuming that you may or may not have, or the educator is teaching from a space of lack. But some educators don't know what they're missing, and some teachers don't know what their students are missing. So now when a student enters a space, they're expecting to be filled up, but they're being taught from a person who's missing something, and they can't see that you're missing something. So there's so much that's being missed in a space where you're at for 8 hours a day, right? And so now it's just like, you're not being filled up because there's too much that's missing, right? And these conversations aren't really being had because, you know, some individuals are a little bit more in tune than others, but they don't always have the platform to say, hey, how can we address this, right? And when you look at it, a lot of times, let's say, you know, education departments know the issue, right? We know that, let's say, people of color love music, right? We know that, you know, people of color like wearing certain type of clothes, like wearing their hair a certain type of way. Yet these things aren't allowed in school. You don't see hip hop truly represented in academic spaces. Why? Because what is hip hop? It's loud. You got to be quiet in school. What is hip hop? You know what I mean? It's movement. You got to sit still in school. You know, what is hip hop? It's dress. It's stylish. It's like, hey, let's have a fashion show every week. See who wins this week, right? That's what hip hop is. You know what I mean? Show out, show up, and show out. And that's missing. And so when you don't have that dynamic, you have people who wonder or question, is this space for me? Like, why am I here if I'm not truly being represented? The books aren't written by people of color. A lot of the teachers aren't people of color. right? The principals sometimes aren't, and then when they have the principals are people of color, they're given some of the worst students. And by what I mean worst students, I mean the people who needed support financially their whole life and never got it. And what I mean by financial support, they needed more teachers or better teachers than what they were given. So they're not going to be the best student because they weren't given what they need. And in my opinion, I know we have like ELL and ESL programs, like with English language learners, and English is a second language. If we've truly looked at African American vernacular as its own language, why would we not, have the same type of financial support that English language learners get inside of schools for African Americans? It would just make sense. It would just make sense because they speak a whole different language. If I were to talk the way I talk to my friends, to the PhD people, they would not understand what I was saying. They would not. They would be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, it just is the words, the speed, the communication, the eye contact, the tapping. You got to hit somebody, you got to laugh, the cutting somebody off. It's not there, and it's a whole different language that people have to learn and assimilate to, or else they'll be unsuccessful. And then that's why we have a lot of women of color doing better than men of color in academic spaces. And I believe that begins to make them think that they are better than men because they're so used to being told that they're so smart. When in actuality, it's actually something called the brown girl syndrome, to where women of color get better grades just because they behave in the way that society believes they should, is sit down and be quiet. Whereas African American males are a little bit more active or may not write as neatly, now they get worse grades, even though they're the same level of competency. But because African Americans males weren't told that they're smart by academia, sometimes they think they're less than and don't move forward in academic spaces or in life at times, and they just settle for bare minimum. And that's why I believe you have women who are excelling in academic spaces or having the highest educational worth and doing all these amazing things. And I feel like it starts in school. And until we start to do something about what is missing in these schools, we're going to continue to have the problems that we have in society. Mind you, I don't know how we got on this topic. It's just something I felt that needed to be said.
Right.
We talked about academia a little bit. We touched on it. But you're gonna be missing something. You're gonna be lacking some creative processes if you're not reading books.
Right.
And you start to develop that capacity to read from school. And you can be very discouraged from reading because of school, because they never gave you the books that represented your culture enough to make you want to draw you in. They never figured out how to draw you in. And now you done drew the conclusion that school isn't for you or reading isn't for you. And now you haven't elevated your thought.
That's true. I remember when I was in high school, I went to Alfred E. Smith on 3rd Avenue. And I remember one assignment we had and how we could, as students, better grasped the educational concept, the curriculum, and I came up with the idea of edutainment, because I remember when I was in school and Biggie and coming out and Tupac coming out and Wu-Tang and Public Enemy, and I used to learn all of the lyrics, you know what I mean, and I posed that in an essay. I watched a few of your videos and some of your posts, and you do something where you incorporate hip hop with science. In your what you just said, you said that there's something missing. There's a disconnect between society and educators and academia. And how could we bridge the gap? Did you do that? The hip hop competition, because there was a lack of communication. There was a bridge that was gapped between your students and the professors.
Absolutely, absolutely. My former advisor, Dr. Chris Emden, I definitely want to give him a shout. He was doing something to where he was working with high school students and asked them to, make songs about science. And, I was like, hey, great idea. I'm going to bring this into the college space. And I'm going to have my science students make rhymes about science, but I'm not going to just have them make a rhyme about it. I'm going to have them compete against each other. Because as we just discussed before, you can have someone run a race, right? Let's say I ask you to run a mile. You're going to run it. That was nothing. If I ask you to race somebody, you're going to run that thing completely different. You're going to use different thought, different strength. You're going to make sure your shoes is tied tight. You're going to do it differently. And I wanted to prepare people for society. And the best way to do that is to compete with yourself, but better to compete with somebody else. Because now you're competing with a different culture, a different thought process, and people aren't just competing with themselves, they're competing against the world. They're competing against the person in the next city from them, competing against the world. We got Zoom now. You can Zoom somebody in from Asia, Africa, Australia. You know what I mean? So until you get that competitive edge to where you can realize, dang, I have to know this person's stuff as well as my stuff. And that's how people have to think. And I needed a hook to draw them into science, because what's the hook now? How are we promoting science? Only people who are promoting science are the ones who are already in it. Oh, my brother's this, my uncle's that. I never had nobody encouraging me to do science. I only had one Caucasian man who told me, yo, I think you're smarter who gets a PhD. That's all I needed. If I had anything more than that, you quit. That's all I had. He said, he just whispered to me, I think you should go do it. My chemistry teacher. And that's what made me go get my PhD. Ain't nobody else ever in my life tell me nothing about that but him. You know what I mean? And it was in college. So, but people didn't even have that. But people don't even understand what it took me to get that. You know what I mean? Like it made me had to humble myself, because he said something slick to me and I humbled myself. And I was like, and then that's when he took me under his wing and kind of showed me the ropes a little bit, not in everything, but he just, gave me special attention, and I appreciated it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to listen to you. You know what I mean? Because I think people never got that. You know what I mean? From somebody who looked like them or somebody who didn't. And, yeah, but there's so much more to it, there's a lot more to it. Yeah.
All right. You mentioned the disconnect between yourself as a professor and your students, and how the curriculum doesn't resonate with some people because they may have missing pieces. I know this from a lot of your busy videos, and you started hair loss product. Was that the reason why you started that? Because there was that disconnect between you and your students, because they have missing pieces that sometimes is not seen, talked about?
Really I got involved is because I felt like hair loss was a missing piece in myself, and I think there's a lot of times where, individuals have unaddressed issues within themselves, and sometimes they don't realize it's an issue until somebody says something to them and they didn't realize they would be hurt by that. And I think people have to sit down and spend time learning their triggers, because I believe that, sometimes if you so focused and you killing yourself and working hard, sometimes when you killing yourself, you don't realize who you bleed on. You know what I mean? And when you on people, it could be poison to them. You're like, oh, that don't feel right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think the more we get in tune with what makes us feel good and what makes us feel whole, and what doesn't, we'll start to operate in a more conscious space of the individuals around us. And so, as it relates to the hair loss, I felt like it would be something that a lot of people benefited from. And interestingly enough, it was never the people who I thought really needed it the most used it. It was the people who really had good hair and just was like, so it was like, oh my God, it's not perfect like it used to be. Let me address it. And I was like, you're not even the person I would think would need it, but you are more concerned than the people who I think need it the most.
Right.
And I think that says a lot about life sometimes too, but I think, as it relates to the culture, I think that people don't understand that when people have said, I want a woman with natural hair, right? Relating it to women, right? People don't realize how many people, how many women have done everything they could. They got this injections, they got this, they got that. But because they didn't have someone to guide them, they didn't the results that they had hoped for. Like, people gonna understand, when you get those injections in your head, the doctor makes money from every shot they give you. So it's not advantageous for them to direct you to go get something that they're not going to directly profit from. You
Right.
need someone who you can actually buy cares about you more than make and be around that, and not just from somebody who has a product or can guide you or who's a consultant, but just in life in general, whether it be work, whether it be academic spaces, whether it be friendships, whether it be family. It's just being in spaces where it feel right. Keep talking to that person, not talking to you, for their health. They're talking to you because they care. Somebody, if you wanted 10 minutes ago, because they would, if they value your time, they would feed. Now you feeding them. And if you always feeding somebody, then how are you being replenished? So you have to, I was working with a buddy of mine who was doing some research on it. And when I didn't have an advisor anymore in Ohio, me and my partner, we started working together and came up with something great, and began just trying to inform everyone about it. So a lot of people appreciated it in Africa, Canada, Asia, all of these different places. And I guess what led me to it, is just understanding, like, being born within hair, what it did for me. I guess comfort wise, or confidence wise, and I think sometimes we're not even aware of some of the areas where we may lack confidence. It's not until a trigger comes up, we're like, damn, I didn't even know I was affected by that. And it's like, how often do we sit back and explore or jot down the things that, like, are hurting us or harming us, and, like, try to see if we can do something about it, right? Or try to see, like, can I address, or if not, how can I come to peace with it? And so, with the hair research, I was able to publish it, inform a lot of people, help a lot of people. I even understood or began to further understand what women of color go through. When they have tried to regrow their hair. And so when people say, oh, I don't know why women of color wear wigs, or why some people wear wigs, they don't understand, like, some people have tried everything, and hair regrowth sometimes isn't a one size fits all process. Right. And, I have this separate.
You know what I mean? And those are the times that you would have to feed other people, when you are full or fulfilled within yourself, just like you said in the beginning of the interview, that when you get on the plane, the stewardess always say to put on the oxygen mask on yourself first, because you can't save anybody if you're not breathing yourself. You know what I mean? And people necessarily, sometimes they ignore societal norms and what people say what beauty is, and hair loss is one of the things that people will say, oh, because you have patches in your hair or you bald and you're not beautiful. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Beauty starts within. Some people have medical conditions why their hair fall out, or they take medication that prompts them or causes them to have their hair fall out. But what I want to ask is, each client that comes to you, do you formulate something specific to them, or is it one specific formula that's for everybody that is not on the market, that helps people achieve the goal of regenerating hair?
It's specific to the individual. It depends on how long. It depends on the hair type, the texture. Because I mentioned before, hair loss isn't like we said, a one size fits all process, right? It's just it's intricate. It's it's timely, but people who have worked with me have regrown hair in up to 2 days.
Mm.
I got phone calls from people like, oh my God, Jamie. I'm like, what's up? They're like, I'm starting to see hair grow back. I'm like, so what's the problem? They're like, well, I didn't expect it to happen this fast. I'm like, you think I'm here to waste your time? You think I got
Yeah.
nothing better to do to talk to you about something that don't work?
Right, right,
Listen,
right.
I respect me too much to do something like that. It would not make sense to me.
And you know what? What's
And
the
so,
norm? What the norm is that people make money on the comeback. They feed them this narrative and this good scripted words that gets people hook, line, and sinker, and they not focus on the cure. They focus on, if I keep on taking this, one day is going to happen. Maybe not next week or 2 weeks from now. Or it's like those elixirs back in the day with the Coca-Cola. People would take them and they were hooked by the slick talking salesman. They're not really your clients, I'm going to assume, didn't think that or fathom that they were actually going to get cured from it. You know what I mean? Because you're not into having them come back. You want to cure what ails them, and that's the difference.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, scenario, and I think people have to be aware of kind of who they're dealing with, and just look for the energy, look for the vibes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And some people just don't know any better. They think it should work, or they don't recognize, like, hey, maybe you're suffering from something internally or spiritually, and that's why, right? Like when to pivot, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a stock. You got your money in the stock market. You got to know when to get in and when to come out of it.
It's true.
There's no such thing as a bad stock. It's maybe you just bought it at a bad price.
Right.
And
Right.
that's all life is. It's like knowing when to get into something and when to get out of it. The food tastes good on the first day, don't mean it's gonna taste good on the 28th. It's the
Listen.
same food, right? But sometimes you gotta get the new food. It's just like
Yeah.
applying certain principles to other areas of life.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, people don't look at it things like that. They just see one thing and one way of thinking. People got the blinders on and they don't want to see anything else because that's not what society teaches us to be individuals. Society teaches people to be a part of the flock. You know what I mean? And you think as the group, as the collective. And if you go off on your own on a tangent, they call you the rogue, they call you the black sheep. And that's not necessarily the case. We should all be individuals, seven kids, seven different minds, seven different outcomes. Everybody is not the same. So the products that we have, the clothes that we have, the mindset that we have, it shouldn't be, like you said, cookie cutter. It's not one size fit all. If you go to a sports apparel place and you buy a Yankee cap and it's a fitted, your Yankee cap fitted is not going to be the same size as my Yankee cap fitted. You know what I mean? You shouldn't buy my size and I shouldn't buy your size. It's the same Yankee cap. You know what I mean? 59.50, but it's not going to be the same size. So let's just, like you said, we got to apply principles in different areas of life in order to function, in order to be successful. So you have a lot of things going on. If there is anything that we didn't touch bases on, Dr. Jamie Parker, please, the floor is yours. Just let it rip. And if you have any words of wisdom for my audience, just let them have it.
I was just saying, when you're at this point in your life, if you have access to the internet, I would say the most important thing I would share is, if you're in a situation where you're not sure what to do or how to feel and how to go about it, just look at it like food, right? Meaning that when you consume food, if something doesn't taste right, what do? You spit it out.
Stop
You get
eating.
rid of it.
Yeah.
You're in a situation where you feel the energy ain't right, if you feel the love ain't right, if you feel the commitment, the whatever else, the money ain't right, don't stay in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there is the best advice I could give somebody. You know when it's right and when it ain't. And if you can't fix it through words, through emails, through gestures, it's not for you. And the quicker you realize that in different situations, the happier you'll be in life. Because what's worse than being in a bad situation is thinking you in a good situation, but it's actually bad.
Yeah.
And that is, and you can't get your time back. You know what I mean? So yeah. I'm in the process of writing a book, in hopes of sharing some of my thoughts and theories, with individuals, and I hope that people will get it once it's released. And if you appreciate the message or the thoughts, I'm hoping you visit meaclock.com and pick up some apparel for yourself or others. And just let me know your thoughts on how you feeling, or if there's certain topics or areas that you would like delved further into, if you want to connect and have certain, physical meetings or meetings online. I think it's about, like I said, just coming together. And I think some of us have been apart too long. And I think some of us are more connected than we think or would prefer to be. And sometimes we just have to accept it and no longer resist it.
Well, yeah, you're a very dynamic human being, and a lot of the talking points that you have, I normally say those things. So this is a great union, you know what I mean? And we have to revisit this conversation again, again on my platform. I normally interview my guests, and then on a later date, I have them come in and we just, chew the fat and talk about any topic that comes to mind, so we can keep the ball rolling and motivate the people, But
Yeah, no problem, brother. Look forward.
yeah, I thank you, Dr. Parker, on coming on the show. This is Creatives Corner. My name is James Dale, and I see you on the next one.